Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
Are you ready to level up your team skill development? Well, Bology is here to support you in driving accountability and skill development. The Bology app is more than just tracking. It's a resource for enhancing skills, knowledge, and mindset across your program. Join coaches all across the country using Bology to simplify training and empower your athletes. Let's build consistency, accountability, and skill development together.
Culture, and that is a buzzword that's thrown around a lot. I love the who is it, Coach Moser at OU? Is that right? Coach Porter Moser, right? Yes. Yeah. At OU, he had in his press conference, he said, we want to play fast, up tempo, and we're going to have a great culture. Then he goes, oh man, I said it. And because I said that word, I'm going to show up in all these videos talking about culture. But it is important. And with 400 wins, state championships at Brock and at Argyle, like two different schools, that's incredible. How does culture drive performance?
Well, I view culture is really just your program expectations. What are your expectations as far as success on the court, and then what's your expectations for how your kids act and, their ability to train and all that. And so, I've been fortunate to be in two schools where we've had very high expectations. Our expectations at both schools and the ones that I set for the program are to win championships. And so then it goes down to what it takes to do that. For me, I feel like it takes, the opportunity to set the tone as seventh graders. Hey, here's what we're competing for. We're competing to win and to be fundamental. And then when they get into high school, especially at the varsity level, what it takes to be a champion. We kind of learned the hard way back in 22-23. We went to 5A. We had we'd just come off a state semifinalist in 4A, went to 5A. And, we had a really good regular season. We got beat in the area round. And so I took a reflection, when I look back, and the biggest concern I saw was we didn't have enough depth and we weren't physically strong. And so our expectations and culture became, hey, we've got to be tougher. We've got to spend more time in the weight room, and to see all that play out. So our culture was, hey, compete every day. And we built accountability groups in the weight room. And so kids could see the progress and compete and hold each other accountable. And we carried that over, setting goals for this season we just concluded. Our expectation and culture is to win championships, to compete for championships. And so what does that take? And by doing all those steps, we saw progress. And this year we made a great jump. We went to the regional finals, lost to a really good Timberview team. I've just always viewed culture as what are your expectations for your program as far as success and what it takes to achieve those goals.
Man, I think a really good nugget that you had was starting that idea, those standards down at the younger levels. Because I think so often we maybe just focus on our varsity team and the standards that we're going to set with that group or JV, maybe freshmen. But I think you're right on the money. I think the more effort, the more time that you can spend with those lower grades and having them understand what it takes, I think you're setting yourself up for maybe not an easier time, but more buy-in in the future.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. And that's something we do. We're fortunate here. We've got some banners hanging on the wall. And so when we have basketball camp, we make sure we talk to the kids at camp all the way from first grade to ninth graders about, hey, what it took to achieve those. It's not just showing up, and how this is a sport that you pretty much got to work on it year round. Basketball, I feel like it's so skilled. If you take a couple months off, you're going to get passed up. You can always be shooting, handling the ball and stuff like that. And so we talk about those expectations, and then we have a buddy system. A high school has a junior high buddy, and they go to games and vice versa. And so, we try to make it where, if you go to school in Argyle, what the basketball program's all about. And we have kids that want to be a part of that, realize what it takes to achieve, the goals.
Does the buddy system, is that like all high school kids have a junior high, or is that just for varsity? How's that work?
All high school kids is what we do. And so we have A, B, and C teams in middle school. So we're talking about 60 kids, 7th and 8th grade. And so I have about 30 high school kids. So they each get one, maybe one 8th grader, one 7th grader. And so, they connect with those kids, and they invite them to high school games and vice versa. And the kids love that. And I just think that, because a lot of these kids, when they were in junior high and had the high school buddy, now they're high schoolers. And so it's something that one of my assistant coaches, suggested a few years ago when we started it. And it's just been great for our program. And, just a way, a connecting point that I think is very important if you want to have a successful program.
Man, I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that idea of, we've had high school guys go down and watch games, and maybe they help out with camp and they interact with them a little bit, but that's kind of a different level of accountability right there. Do you mind, like, what are some of the guidelines, or, if you were to have like a sheet that outlines the buddy system, what are some of those things? You mentioned, a varsity going to their game, them going to theirs. Any other interactions?
Well, yes, they'll have some throughout the year. A lot of kids here, a lot of our middle school kids come to a lot of the varsity games, and we do things, we might have them try to get together maybe one time during Christmas break. And we also will have one game where a high schooler is going to go to the middle school game, and they'll take them a little treat basket, and then vice versa. And that way, you've got 2 or 3 games right there. You're connecting kids. And then I've noticed that. And so, it's just something that, anything you can do to connect programs and just have more people at the games and that excitement. I love it.
No, that's a great idea. That's something I'm definitely going to look at implementing, because I think, an advantage of a smaller school like we are is that everybody kind of knows everybody, and we can't have that connection. I wanted to talk a little bit about the environment that the city, the community of Argyle creates. To me, it's very much like a Brock, like a Lipan, like a Highland Park, as far as the excellence and the standards that are set, the expectations, like you said, of winning. I mean, you can go to an Argyle game and you feel it. What is some of your advice for maybe somebody taking over a program that isn't in that type of community? How do you create those standards when maybe there hasn't been anything like that before?
I think the first thing is I try to include my freshman team, my JV and varsity. I try to make them all equally important. It is hard when you get to focusing on one, but we practice JV versus varsity together probably 90% of the time. The freshman has a separate period, and they'll go against JV as well. But, we travel a lot together on the bus, and we'll have all 3 teams. And what we do is just try to get as many people involved as possible. We do one of our big fundraisers is a golf tournament, and that's not just the varsity parents working. We get parents from even down to middle school, mostly all high school parents, but then the kids come out there and work. And then we try to say, hey, this money that we raise here, it's we don't just spend it on the varsity. We spend it on every program. We do a team bonding right before the season starts. We've gone and did this past year. We went to and played pickleball. We've done a ropes course. We've done stuff like that where all 3 teams go. So you're talking about 30 kids, managers, 35 in that range. And while we're there, we'll group them up. It's not varsity with just varsity. And so school invite teachers to game, and they might be dressed up. And I think that's the important thing, is not just making it about your program only. What can you do to be a part of the school as a whole? Because if the school feels like you're supporting them, those kids are going to go support your games. And so that's one thing about a small town that I think is very, something that's beneficial. Argyle's unique because they didn't have a high school. I think their first graduating class was in 2002. So we're just talking a little over 20 years.
Yeah.
Whereas Brock has over 100-year history. But Argyle starting out as a 2A, moving up 3A, spent a lot of years at 4A, just went to 5A. So they have a lot of the small town mindset and philosophy, but then they have, the new people coming in move here to be a part of that too. So it's been real special.
No, that's really good. And I think the challenge when you talk about remembering that it's not just about your games and your sport, man, I struggle with that. And so like I remember thinking of basketball season where I'm going the hallway saying, hey, you come and talking to teachers, hey, 7:30 tonight, you're going to be there. But then it's baseball season and I'm not there. Like I need to do a better job. We had a senior this year organize our high school guys going to a volleyball game, making sure we were at football games. And because of that, because of his leadership, we had more students at ours game. But I do think, like, as a coach, instead of it being, we do have tunnel vision at times, but making sure our players know that these other sports, the way we feel about basketball, they feel that way about their sport. And let's go support them. I think, well, that would be a cool thing to see, the culture overall, the whole campus improve because of our sport.
Absolutely. And one thing with our accountability groups, we give kids points if they have, 5 out of 6 members go to a softball game, volleyball game. So that's another way that, we can kind of get kids there as a group. And then, I think it's reciprocated among other sports. So that's something that I've noticed, in our school too. And I would encourage every school, celebrate successes. When a team, makes volleyball team, maybe they win 2 or 3 rounds in the playoffs. I think at the school, celebrate that every day when we have announcements. Over the loudspeaker, our principal is recognizing kids that won district, that went to regionals. And I think that's important to really just celebrate those successes so other kids know. And it's just it kind of builds a community within your school.
And I think you could take another step further with social media, not just from maybe your program's platform. Obviously, them celebrating other sports, that's huge. But, guys like Coach Drew, he does such a great job at Baylor of when I follow him, like, softball, he'll talk about a big win that they had. This and I think, golly, if he can do that at that level, then I need to be hyping up the fact that our baseball team just went 11-1. Like doing a better job of being all about faith, not just all about faith basketball. But Coach, I mean, that's hard, right?
It is. I struggle with that too. I'm not a huge social media person. Luckily, I have a great assistant that runs a lot of that. You're exactly right. It would be so easy. I go to these events, I follow them, and it would be really easy just to put a quick, hey, congrats, what a big win. And I think that's something that as a coach, I can do a better job. But you're absolutely right. That support, it just goes a long way. I love a tournament and then seeing, Alabama's playing the Final Four and Nick Saban's at the game. That goes a long way that you've got, the coaches there supporting as well.
Coach, I'm just thinking about all the ways that I've been doing this wrong. That's all I'm thinking.
Well, I know. Well, no, I don't think anybody does anything wrong. There's just a million different ways to do it.
No doubt. But wanting our players to be selfless, having a higher theme, an overarching theme in our program that's bigger than just winning. I think that feeling of community, let's let our programs be not just a bright spot to our players and in their lives, but man, a bright spot in the school where like the whole school is thankful in a way that girls basketball at Argyle, boys basketball at Faith, that we're there. And to leave a bigger mark than just a gold ball in the trophy case. Those are cool goals right there to have.
Absolutely.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.